In a Radio Hanoi broadcast tonight, Vietnam admitted Chinese troops are advancing. Several provincial capitals are threatened. Already 2 major Vietnamese towns are said to have been overrun, plus a string of villages along the 500-mile border. As the two communist nations battle, President Carter's been busy determining what the U.S. response should be. White House correspondent George Strait reports.
Official U.S. policy toward the conflict in Asia was developed at a morning meeting here at the White House between Secretary of State Vance, National Security Advisor Brzezinski, Vice President Mondale, their staffs, and the President by phone from Camp David. At that meeting, 4 principles were decided upon. First, the U.S. will not become directly involved militarily. Second, the United States will use any diplomatic leverage it gained during Vice Premier Deng's visit here to encourage the Chinese to pull out of Vietnam. Third, we will try to get the United Nations involved in coming up with a solution to the whole Southeast Asian problem. And finally, our allies in the region, namely Thailand, will be protected. But few believe Thailand is in any immediate danger. What all of this means is that U.S. officials are now in a holding pattern, waiting to see what happens in Asia before any American action is contemplated. White House officials concede that intelligence reports that they've received so far indicate that there is a real possibility that the Soviet Union will respond militarily to the invasion of its ally Vietnam by China. But few expect that response to be massive, and no one here has any fears that that response will lead to a superpower confrontation. George Strait, ABC News, the White House.
This is Bob Brown. Chinese news broadcasts have shown none of the current fighting, only scenes from past skirmishes along the border with Vietnam. But diplomatic sources say 2 district capitals have fallen to the Chinese, and 12 villages in 4 provinces have been overrun. Radio Hanoi claimed Vietnamese defenders had inflicted heavy casualties and disabled nearly 60 tanks, but also admitted that 2 provincial capitals were threatened. The Chinese greatly outnumber the Vietnamese, who are fighting back with civilian militia. Many of Vietnam's best troops are in Cambodia, where they helped overthrow a regime that was friendly to China. Today, the new Cambodian regime signed a peace and cooperation treaty with Vietnam. China's loss of its Cambodian alliance, coupled with Vietnam's strong ties to the Soviet Union, apparently convinced the Chinese that some assertive action had to be taken. Now, the Soviets are studying their options. This is one of several meetings the Russians say were held in factories and universities to demonstrate solidarity with Vietnam. Pravda said the Soviet Union will honor its recent treaty with Vietnam. The treaty is not, however, a military alliance, and the ultimate response of the Soviets may depend on the extent of China's actions in Vietnam. China has suggested its invasion is punitive, that its troops eventually will return to guard the frontier. The United States, says Senate Foreign Relations Committee Chairman Frank Church, should stay out.
These are communist governments fighting one another. If they are determined to fight, then I say let them fight. We don't have to be the centerpiece of every war that comes along.
In areas close to the conflict, the apprehension is greatest. Thailand's Prime Minister Chaman has just completed a U.S. visit to meet with administration advisors. And despite U.S. reassurances today that Thailand will be protected, he issued a statement to say, "We want to ask one thing, just don't get us involved." Bob Brown, ABC News.
Besides worrying her neighbors, China's invasion of Vietnam could further complicate deliberations in Washington over the naming of the first U.S. ambassador to Peking. The U.S. and China have agreed to exchange ambassadors by March 1st, but new debates in Congress over Taiwan's safety will likely be fueled by China's attack on neighboring Vietnam. This could delay the confirmation of ambassador-designate Leonard Woodcock.